And we're off. All right. I'm going to have a fun little call today, and it is on the why do most people fail at mastering a new skill? I've been thinking about this because a couple people on the call know I've been trying to learn some new skills. I'm trying a couple of different things, and so being a research fanatic, again, as a psychologist, I go back and I research more. And I was really starting to think about this because those of us, and I know there's a few trainers on the call, it's one of the things we always wonder. People they take classes, they spend time and money, and they're there to learn a new skill set, and it doesn't seem to transfer into their daily life. I do know, like in the corporate world, they wonder about this. That's why they always cut back on corporate training, especially like a lot of times sales training. They'll send people off to learn new skills, and then they don't seem to follow through on that. So let's just go ahead and get started. So go ahead and type "yeah, baby" in the question box. I think I've fixed my issue with the audio going in and out. We shall see. And it looks like there's no storm going on in my part of Florida right now. So let's just get started. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for being on the call. And what would happen if you could master a new skill you desire and make it natural, right? Whatever that skill happens to be. And let's face it, it's no big secret that people pay and study to learn a new skill, yet they fail to apply it in their daily lives. And how many new skills have you wanted to learn but have gotten stuck in transferring it into becoming a natural skill set? So how much time and money have you wasted on new things that you never really master? You want to master, but you never quite master. And here's what's tried. Especially those in our field, we have an advantage. We add self-hypnosis techniques. We do NLP techniques to speed up our learning, right? Seems to help somewhat. And we repeat the trainings or whatever it is that we're trying to learn. Of course, we read inspirational books. Now, why doesn't that seem to work? Well, basically, one of the things that happens is we're not understanding, and this is also the fault of some of us trainers, and I've keep tweaking my trainings about this. It's not understanding how adults learn new skills, right? It's based on a model that works quite well for children sometimes, but it doesn't work as well for kids. And that's because of ego. The ego. As adults, we develop different egos, and ego gets in the way a lot of times of learning a new skill set. I use the analogy of taking a martial arts. And there was a school I went to, and I had I think a second degree in one style and a first degree black belt in another style, but it was a style I'd never taken. It was Taekwondo, right? So I'm like, I'll go there and see what the school's like. So, I went there, and a lot of the basics are the same. And, the stances, little nuance differences, but, a front punch is a front punch, a kick's a kick, all that stuff. Of course, they call it different things, but somewhat the same. Well, I decided I was going to take some classes, so I started talking to the teacher. And one of the things he asked me, of course, I had my gi on with my, worn out black belt, because I'd been doing martial arts for a long time. And he says, well, you do know, though, when you go to train here, you're going to have to wear a white belt and line up with the white belts. And I'm like, okay, no problem. And, so I took a few classes. And then after about a couple weeks of classes, he told me, go ahead and put your black belt back on and, line up, where you're, with the senior people. Anyway, talked to him later, and he said mainly he was wanting to check my ego. Was I willing to put my ego aside? Because I admitted I didn't know the forms that they had, and the terminology. I couldn't count to, 1 to 10 in Korean. Like I couldn't Japanese. Anyway, but it was an ego, and I saw it. Another person came in, wanted to train, took a couple classes and signed up, but when he asked the guy to wear a white belt, he refused. He got his panties in a knicker, as they say, and basically didn't come back. But the other thing why it doesn't work, besides ego, with even adding our NLP or our hypnosis skill sets to learning a new skill, is you can't think the thought and be the coach, right? It's kind of like how hard it is to direct yourself in a play. It can be done. Excuse me, but it's hard to do. It's easier to direct yourself in a movie because you can stop, watch it, go back and redo it. But anyway, you can't think the thought and be the thinker. You can't coach yourself while you're playing as easily, right? And inspiration without motivation and direction is useless. Absolutely useless. In fact, it can become frustrating. And one of the things you have to realize is when you go to learn new material, I tweaked my trainer's training a few years ago with this. It was one of the first to add it. Now I see it in some other trainings. But basically, it's the format method of how do adults want to learn information. Number one is there's a percentage of the population, about a little over 30, I think, that want to learn why should I learn this information, right? So whatever it is that they're learning, hypnosis, NLP, Reiki, yoga, whatever it is, why should I learn it, right? Why? And if you explain the why, that's their motivating. So you have to motivate them on the why. We're going to come back to this. Some people want to know what specifically are they going to learn. Is it, self-defense tactics if I was teaching martial arts, or is it the holistic aspect of the martial arts? But what is it I'm going to learn specifically, right? How am I going to learn it? Is it, just lecture and reading? Is it hands-on? Is it doing? Now, this becomes very important for learning a skill set because it's useless to just think about and read about and be lectured about a skill that you have to physically apply, right? You actually have to eventually go out and do it. And then what if? What if when I learn this information, I take it into this thing? This is something kind of missing in a lot of us when we teach NLP or hypnosis to people. We don't give them the what ifs and where to put it in their lives. I see it work very well when I'm teaching NLP for salespeople because it's very applicable in their sales life, right? Unfortunately, what I see happen a lot with us in our field, the NLP and the hypnosis people on the call, is, I'm going to just use this for my clients. They don't internalize it. That's why a few years ago, we were one of the first to begin to, have people really almost demand in my classes that they work on real life issues. I was teaching was it 2 years ago at a big conference, and I brought this up. I said, write down several things you want to work on, so when we go to do this, I want basically, what if you do the NLP techniques for your own real phobia? What if you do it about your weight loss issues? What if, and one person in the room goes, I really don't have anything I need to work on. I'm like, well, you're a liar. Either that or you've transcended. I don't understand that. I think, but anyway, because if you make it applicable in real life situations, it becomes more powerful. So how do adults learn? They learn, they say that there's 4 levels. We talk about this. The unconscious incompetence, you don't know that you don't know. Then we go to conscious incompetence. Then we go to conscious competence. Then we go to unconscious competence. So, when you don't know, you don't know. You're ignorant. And there's nothing wrong with this. You just don't know. But then you learn consciously that you don't know something. When I wanted to, learn how to build a website, I knew I didn't know how. I mean, it was in my realm of experience. I'd known about them. I just knew I did not know how. I was consciously incompetent. I couldn't do it. And then if you practice it, you go get the skills, you become consciously competent at it, right? That you can do it, but you have to think about it while you're doing it. And of course, if you get really good, you get to the unconscious competence, where you don't even have to think about you can do it. We always use this in the self-development world and talk about like driving a car. Most of us don't have to think about driving a car, even though there may be times you back up and have to think about it. You're driving a new car, a different car. You have to think about it. But even then it becomes, you don't have to think about it consciously to do the behavior. We usually present it like a ladder. You move up this, and once you get to conscious competence, you're set. Well, the problem with this, what's missing? What is missing? Why doesn't this seem to work with those of us that are learning a skill? Well, two things. Again, most people think of it as a ladder like this, when in fact it's not a linear progression at all. It's cyclical, and it repeats itself. You're going to constantly go back to different levels as you're learning a new skill, because you're never done learning. And this is where the adult ego and prior learning get in the way. You begin to think, well, this is just like. Well, the moment you say this is just like, learning this NLP techniques, it's just like cognitive behavioral therapy with some language stuff. Well, the minute you do that, and that prior learning that you have gets in the way of you learning any new information because you're not open to it. So children don't seem to have this problem because, A, they don't have the prior learnings that an adult may have, but they're just more open to developing their ego, right? And then also, while you're learning, if you're not getting really good feedback on the journey, you're not going to learn as efficiently, right? And it's more of a cyclical, circular thing. You move from unconscious incompetence because you discover there's something you don't know. And that's the beginner's mind, right? And then you don't know, so you maybe now that's the switch point. You may not want to learn it, but then you get a lot of discouragement because there's so much to learn, right? But then you go into that, you're in that beginner's mind, you begin to learn it through effort, hopefully through some tutelage and mentorship, you can become consciously competent, right? And then maybe like the arrow says, you go to unconscious competence and it becomes like second nature or intuition. But a lot of people never hit that. They go to reflective competence. They can do it, but they have to think about it. Now, there may become times where they drop down here into where they can do it without thinking about it, but they're usually bouncing back and forth. They have to reflectively think about what they want to do to really get good at it. And if it's a skill set that's constantly evolving, you're never going to get to this, because as soon as you learn some part of it, you realize there's all this other stuff you need to learn. So you're constantly in this little circle here, right? We're consciously incompetent, you're consciously competent, you hit reflective competence, so you can do it but you have to think about it, you have to plan it. And of course, you're practicing, like it says, mature practice. And you may have self-study, but the best is have peer review and to have some kind of tutelage or mentorship, because you're getting some outside. Because when you're in this cycle, it's hard to see what you're doing wrong. You get these unconscious errors. You're not even aware that you're making the mistake, right? And so then we think about motivation. And most people mistakenly believe motivation will drive them. Well, it will start you, but it will not continue. It's only a first step. Motivation's the driver, And again, for motivation to really work, for adults, it has to become internal, right? Because if you have other things, again, the ego gets in the way. It's like, I'm not going to do that. It's too much work. I'm going to keep doing what I've always done, right? But for adults, it must become internal for it to really become effective, right? So, and again, motivation's only the first step. So on a scale of 1 to 10, it must be a 9. Because until it becomes internal, the motivation can get totally blown out by some discouragement from friends or family members, right? And usually I see it with people learning hypnosis or NLP, their family or friends, oh yeah, you don't need to do this, right? I just had a wonderful experience. I got to work on a film, an action film. In fact, it should be up on YouTube next week for everybody to see. Well, one of the guys in it had never acted and was one of the leads. He's playing the bad guy, martial artist. And it did a great job. Everybody did a really good job, right? But he after we got the movie back and he had copies, he showed it to some people and friends, right, and family, and they began to nitpick it, right? Now he was really getting into it. He wanted to learn acting. He was going to take a class and this and that, right? But you know, and he was motivated to do it. But boy, the negative from his friends and family. But he had some tutelage from the guy that directed the film and myself. He called and we were talking, and so he had some other outside influence, you know, that kept his motivation high. But motivation is only a first step. And why motivation may fail is motivation for adults must be balanced by willingness to change. This is where true learning takes place, is when you're doing something differently. You have to do it a little bit differently. You have to be willing to change. How many times, especially as adults, you get in a situation, rather than do it the way that they want them to do it, you're going to say, no, I'm going to do it my way. You know, yeah, well, I get this sometimes at a conference, hypnosis conference, so I'm teaching NLP. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I'm going to do it this way. Well, why would you do it that way? Well, you know, it's basically what they're saying. It's the way they've always done it. They don't have any willingness to change, right? And now again, children are more open to change as it's demanded of them as they, as part of their learning curve. The educational system set up for it, and that's a wonderful thing, right? What we want to do is really focus on that, right? Because kids are developing their ego, and again, it depends where they're at, right? I always think of sports, right? And it's usually the high performers who have high motivation. Like if they go to a new team, they have to be willing to change, right? The team may not change for them, obviously. They're going to have to change to fit their new team. Of course, there's some, you know, financial motivation, some other motivation. So, you know, it's really cool stuff. Cool stuff. So what we want to do is focus on this, right? And again, because adult ego may be resistant to change, right? So have you started learning a new skill, but thought, I know they say do it this way, but I'll do it my way. You know, the I is the ego. When you say my, it's the ego getting in the way, right? I'm going to do it my way. And you know, and the ego lies to you and keeps you stuck, right? And then the ego will get you to blame consciously the new learning. Well, that NLP stuff doesn't work, or well, the Reiki, whatever it is you're trying to learn, it doesn't work because I tried it and it didn't work. But did you try it the way that it was laid out? No. Well, then you don't know if it works, right? And again, ego means eliminating good or new options, or I've heard it also means easing God out, you know, or good orderly directions, right? There's all these things. When your ego gets involved, it starts shutting you down, right? So are you open to change? You know, and how open are you to change? You know, and I always think of a couple of examples. Muhammad Ali totally changed his fighting style when he fought George Foreman in the first time and the second time, but especially the first time, right? Foreman was bigger, faster, stronger, younger. So Ali changed he didn't go toe-to-toe. He didn't dance. He went to what I still remember as rope-a-dope. And when it first started, nobody could figure out why he did that. Well, he was open to change because he knew if he wanted to beat George Foreman, he had to alter his game to do that, because he wasn't going to beat him doing what he always did, right? So it works, right? Tiger Woods totally changed his golf swing a couple of times, right? And it works. He's open to change, right? For whatever the reasons that's going on. You know, and Apple, you know, built one of the good first desktops, and they had, you know, all this stuff going on. But when they went into a new area and created iTunes, at first some people were making fun of it. Of course, it revolutionized their whole business model, right? Um, and really what happens is motivation times willingness to change will equal better change, right? The motivation times the willingness to change. Because if you start a new skill and revert back to your old ideas, you will fail. And then you'll blame the new skills because your ego will get involved. It can't be me, my, I. It's the new skills. They're somehow lacking. And your ego will listen to bad advice because your ego wants to look good. You know, as in acting, Robert Redford once said, you're only as good in your performance as you've got the guts to be bad in rehearsal, right? And it's also why, like in professional theater, and in any theater where people know what they're doing, actors never comment, experienced actors, on another actor's performance, especially during rehearsal, right? Because they're experimenting, they're trying new things, right? And actors have to get their ego out of the way to become good at what they do. But your ego will generally want to listen to that bad advice, especially from friends and family, because your ego is trying to hold on to that old ideas, the old learnings, and you know, you're trying new things, it feels uncomfortable, this other stuff's going on, and you know, somebody says, oh yeah, so you know, you think this, that, or the other thing, and you know, your ego listens to it and makes you feel worse. Like with my friend with his new acting thing, he was listening to that, you know, and it didn't take hard for some outside the director to give him some comments, and all I said is, well, these people giving you all the advice, how many films have they been in? None. Oh. How many plays or acting have they ever done? None. So why are you listening to them? And I reframed it back into his martial arts analogy. That's like the guys that want to critique you on going to a tournament and placing silver, right? Because, oh, well, you didn't win gold. Yeah, well, they don't even take karate. They quit taking karate 10 years ago. They can't cut it, but they want to critique you, right? So what you need to do is overcome your ego. Accept new ideas. Decide on the new skills that you want to learn. You need to get a mentor and a detailed plan to make it natural. This is what you need to do to take these skills from the esoteric or the thought process to make it more normal, right? So step one, you got to decide what skills you want to make yours, right? And what would this skill do for you? This is a big one. So, you know, again, this is the value. What is it you want to learn and what would it do for you? This starts giving you that value, as we say in NLP bad. How bad do you want this skill? Of course, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, it has to be high. That's your motivation. And then can you see, hear, smell, and taste it? You want it so bad that, oh my God, that's everything, right? And what's it worth to you to learn this new skill? Several years ago, I've been taking karate for quite a while, and I got exposed to something new, right? It was pressure point karate. And, you know, I got exposed to it, thought it was kind of cool. And I really wanted it because what that would do for me, you know, people, you know, talk about martial arts and they're, ooh, you know, it's powerful, it's this and that. But, you know, if you've been in martial arts for a while, it's a lot of work. It's like anything. Once you get behind the curtain, the magic is a lot different. But I really wanted it, right? And so I went to a seminar. I drove 2 hours to go to a seminar, and I was fascinated. They were showing pressure points and knockouts with not a lot of force, and I was into it. And I came back, and I talked to my karate teacher, who he hated it. He didn't like it, even though he didn't know anything about it. And you know, one of those sayings I love is contempt prior to investigation will leave one in eternal ignorance. And I was trying to show him this. I said, well, we could take this and this. Well, no. You know, if it worked, I would know it. Well, why would you know it if you didn't know it? So anyway, we went back and forth, and you know, and he was pointing out how much I already knew this in karate and that. And he was feeding my ego, and my ego, well, maybe I don't want to do it. But I really wanted it, right? And so I decided I was going to drive 2 hours once a week to take these seminars, right? And sometimes miraculous things happen. I drove that way to start taking a seminar or a class. There was a guy in the class, we start talking, and he was a master in the skill. He was just dropping in to see his friend. In fact, it was one of his students that was teaching the class. So I started talking to him. I found out he literally lived 15 minutes from me. And so I'm like, oh, wow, do you have a school? He goes, nah, I got rid of my school. His son had a school. I said, oh, okay. Anyway, I ended up taking training in his basement, right? And then moved it to his garage, right? And he only had like 5 or 6 students who were all black belts. Anyway, because I wanted it bad enough, I think the universe begins to take care of you. So step 2 is you honestly have to hire or find a personal coach or mentor. I'm always fascinating in our field. Everybody talks about hypno coaching, hypno mentoring, their personal coaches, their life coaches, this and that. And you go to talk to them, and I always say, well, who's your coach? Well, I don't really have one. Well, who was your last coach? Well, if you really begin to dig, they've never had a coach. Oh, but you're a coach now. To me, that's like you want to coach the Chicago Bears, but you A, never played football, and B, never been a coach before, right? You don't understand the process. And then if it's a good coach or mentor, it sets up an accountability plan. It's not just a plan. There's some challenges, right? And basically what you're using is the outside eyes and ears. Again, you can't think the thought and be the thinker and coach yourself along the way. And be aware of the ego. And a good coach or mentor can work with you on your ego to begin to ease that out, right? So you can develop these new ideas, right? And again, personally, you should make sure your coach has a coach, And people ask me, yeah, I've got a couple of different coaches and mentors that I use professionally. Of course, in my hobby, I have a voice coach that I go to once or twice a week. It's worked wonders with me. It was a skill set I had no idea how to do when I started doing it. And I've sang solos in musicals last year, and been asked to try out for professional theater companies. And he has, he always talks about his coach, and the skills I'm beginning to learn. I've some people on the call may know one of my coaches is Elsa Eldridge, who helped found the National Guild. He helped build the National Guild of Hypnotists, and I have a couple other mentors in the new skills that I'm learning in business, because I need the outside eyes and ears. What am I not doing? And in fact, in June I flew to Salt Lake City for a seminar to learn these new skills. I needed to be with people that were doing it, right? And again, in our field, I see people, they take a few NLP courses, they might have a little practice going, and you start talking about, are you going to this conference or that? No, I don't need, what do you mean you don't need it anymore? Of course, as a psychologist, I have to do certain things for my continuing, by law, I've got to do certain things. But, our field not regulated, we don't see it as much. But again, your coach should have a coach, right? And I can't stress enough that this becomes what you need. And then you need to do the plan, right? To set up that accountability plan and then do the plan. To have the regularly scheduled meetings or, things that you have to do and then get back to your coach. A lot of I do a lot of practice building with people. And, I give them things. You got to go do this and then get back to me. You got to go do that and then get back to me. And it's funny, when you have someone you're accountable to, you're going to do much better. If possible, you need to practice in real life situations. I know one of the things I was so impressed when I started learning this new style of martial arts, which was, they talk about, about once a month, twice a month, they'll have a self-defense day. You're going to come to class, you're going to practice self-defense. Which is, you do that in a lot of martial arts schools. That's great. But what this guy does is say, okay, what do you do for a living? You tell him, okay. Well, this was up north. So, what do you wear to work? You know, if it was wintertime, okay, I want you to wear your winter jacket or get a winter jacket like it, and your dress shoes. You know, whatever, like me with what I do, right? I go, okay, so I got my, overcoat on, a suit coat, a shirt, a tie, you know, dress pants, and obviously in my dress shoes. And like I said, some kind of winter jacket. Well, we were practicing self-defense scenarios with me dressed like that, which really makes sense because, and you started right when you walked in the door. You didn't have time to warm up because his thinking was, you know what? If you get accosted walking to your car after work or you're coming out of the mall, you don't have time to do 5 minutes of warm up, stretch, do this. You're not in a comfortable gi in an environment where you do that. In fact, every once in a while, we would go to a park or we would go out to a parking lot and, okay, now we're going to practice self-defense here. Why? Well, in the dojo, there's nice, it's matted or a nice wood floor. I'll go to the ground. But if I'm looking at a parking lot that's got some broken glass and gravel, I don't want to go to the ground and do any you know what I mean? So practice in real life situation, whatever the new skills, if it's appropriate for that. You know, when I'm doing practice building with people, I give them certain assignments to do with their clients, right? Because that's real life situations. And again, that was my martial arts analogy. It became much easier when it was real life scenarios, right? And then, of course, you have to show up and do the work, right? And all the research says you do better when you're held to an outside review. People do much better, right? In fact, I was talking to Elsom the other day, and he was telling me he's got a mastermind group he's a member of. And one of the reasons he stays in that group and pays his coach is sometimes he knows he will finish the assignment because he knows he's got to meet with these people, and they're going to ask him, "Did you do the assignment?" Right? Or when he meets with his coach, right? And then you need to be able to monitor and adjust the plan in real time, right? This is why sometimes total automation will fail. And what I mean by that is a lot of us with the internet stuff, we're becoming more and more automated. You can watch the practice building webinar and learn a lot of stuff, and it will work to a certain point, but it's not customized because it's hard to adjust it in real time, right? Because that's the next level of learning a skill, is to personalize the details, right? And again, you need someone to help you overcome the ego and the negative feedback that you're going to get, right? So here's what I want you to have, right? A new NLP or hypnosis skill, right? And I want you to be able to internalize the skill. Make it second nature so it becomes normal to do it the new way, right? Overcome ego, right? So this is why I'm trying something new for the first time, which is ultimate personal coaching, right? Ultimate personal coaching. And I believe it's the best coach on getting a new skill set. And I want to make this personal coaching very specific to learning specific skill sets, whether it's practice building or weight loss or addictions work or working with clients or being a client, whatever it is. It's different than anything else I've seen available because there's going to be an accountability where there's written accountability for you to see, me to see, and all the people involved, right? And if you don't have this coaching, well, you'll always get what you always got. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got, right? And you can get started in just a couple hours per week. So, ultimate personal coaching or learning a new skill, right? So in Module 1, we're going to develop your new skill and your plan for developing the skill set that you want. Then we're going to internalize the skill set. Then we're going to adjust, renew, and make the skill set natural. And then Module 4, or in Week 4, we're going to do the ego adjustment, which actually happens all through the whole thing, right? We're going to have challenges for you to do. I like challenges. I don't call them homework anymore. I call them challenges because you can accept the challenge or not accept the challenge, but it puts it back on you. And if you accept the challenge, it's an ego adjustment just by realizing you've been challenged. your ego steps up to a challenge, right? Homework you can just blow off. A challenge, you psychologically, we're in the NLP and the hypnosis world, you respond differently to a challenge rather than a homework, right? You're going to have checklists to get the things done that you have to get done, right? And of course, all your sessions will be recorded, and I'm going to get them transcribed. This one may be off a little bit because if it's just the recordings, that would be less. But I may get them transcribed so you can read it. But the recordings are the important thing. And of course, if you added all that up, that would be the value, right? Of course, I was going to do it. So instead of $39.97 for $9.97, which when I do the practice building, the intensive course, it is about, I usually charge $3,600 to $4,800 for my practice building one-on-one. So I was going to charge this, and then I was going to make it the $9.97, but I'm going to do it for $4.97 till 7/15/2013. And what you'll get for this is all of this, and it'll be customized and dependent on your program, and we'll meet on a webinar like this, except it'll be interactive, and we'll record it. We'll record the session so you can renew it later. And if we do any hypnosis or NLP processes, that'll be recorded for you to do, right? To do later and to review. And it will be like a membership site, so you can always go back to it. So if you want to try this, it's at www.drwillhorton.com. www.drwillhorton.com. It's risk-free. If you're not happy with it, you get your money back. The only catch, of course, you lose access to the training and the coaching, and if we have the recordings, you won't have access to those. You have a decision to make. The good news is it's an easy decision. So go here now. Again, www.drwillhorton.com. And I didn't fix my slide, but without it, it's the same old, stuck in a rut, ego-driven, limited beliefs. With it, you open your ego, and usually when you make one or two changes, the changes become self-generating to new ideas, and you're able to adapt more on your own. And you become a better role model, And again, coaches should have coaches, What to do? Well, go to Dr. Will Horton and click on the coaching special page right in the menu bar, and to secure your spot now. Click the pay button, send your discounted $4.97 to me. And even if you want to put this off and do it later on with summer, with vacations coming up, conferences, things like that, we could set the date backwards, and you won't be paying the normal price, which after 7/15 will be the $9.97. And we can begin to set up your plan, or we can split it and start it and then give you some time to work on it and then finish it later on. I'm going to limit this to 10 people because obviously, 4 to 6 sessions per person, that's going to take some time off my schedule. And I've got a few weeks before the guild and a couple weeks after the guild. So I'm going to limit it to 10 people. And once this is filled, the price is gone forever. So if you choose to do it, go ahead and do this right now, because only you can convince yourself that this is the kind of things you either need to do now or lock your spot in so when you want to do it later. And it's totally up to you. You can use it for personal development, professional development, technical development. If you're working on a training or a seminar or webinar, we could work on that. I know one person wants me to work with them on doing a webinar like this one, and well, in fact, we're going to do it so they can. I'm going to record it for them, make the file available, get it to them, and we'll put it up on YouTube so they'll have their own webinar recorded. That's what they want to do with it. Fine, I will do that. My job is to make you better. So go ahead and do that now, and that's www.drwillhorton.com, and you'll have a lot of fun with this. And I hope to see everybody as we trudge the road to happy destiny. So thank you for being a part of this call, and I wish everyone